Hello everyone, first news update for 18th of March. Now it's 20 to 9 in the morning Moscow time, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some interesting major developments, and hopefully you will find this update informative and interesting. Although before I start, dear friends, let me thank you all for your attention and support, because it's due to your attention, your likes and comments, that somehow we managed yesterday to deal with YouTube's algorithm to overcome these artificial obstacles that algorithm is creating for the channels that are in shadow ban. And what I mean by this is that I don't know if you notice it, but on YouTube, yesterday's video, by the way, yesterday's short clip from our first update definitely reached wider audience, and currently it has more than 53,000 views, 4,300 likes, almost 600 comments, by the way, several hundred new members join our community on YouTube, two new members join our community on Patreon, which is, I will say, great success for last 24 hours for this small media project of mine, and therefore I'm truly grateful. Thank you very much, dear friends. I welcome all new members, and I hope you will find this channel or channels informative, interesting, useful, and on my part I will definitely try to be as informative as I can. For new members, I can also say that, dear friends, if you want to have access to full news updates, you can join our tiny communities on Patreon or Boosty, where I'm publishing these full updates. And on YouTube and Rumble, I have one or two short clips from each update. That's been said. Now let's talk about some news. Although programming, by the way, yesterday unfortunately I was unable to make a live stream, a community chat live stream, for some objective reasons, and therefore I will try to compensate for that today. Later on, about 6 o'clock, maybe 7, I will have a second news update on my Patreon and Boosty, and after that, if phone conversation between Trump and Putin that is planned for today will take place late evening, let's say at 8 or 9 by Moscow time. Once information will become available about that phone conversation, I will start a live stream, and I will share with you some first reactions from Russian side, from Russian public figures, whatever news will be in media, whatever interesting news will be in Russian media, and of course same time we can exchange opinions about any topic during that live stream, about any topic that we like. It's gonna be traditional, community chat, which is always interesting, at least for me. So that's when it comes to announcements. Hopefully I will have enough energy towards late evening to make that a live stream. But anyways, now let's go through some news, and there are quite interesting stuff that was reported by Russian media, important, in some cases extremely tragic. And I will start with this report from Moskovsky Komsomolets newspaper, according to which Trump yesterday, during conversation with reporters, stated or claimed that he actually influenced Russian leadership, Russian political and military leadership, and slowed down or even halted the Russian offensive in Kursk salient area. And by doing so, he saved the lives of encircled troops of the Kiev regime in that part of the Russian Federation. I posted about it this morning on my Telegram and Twitter X pages. Let's see in little details what he has to say. So Ukrainian soldiers surrounded in the Kursk region are alive thanks to my efforts, Trump claims. Russia could have destroyed their Ukrainian armed forces units surrounded in the Kursk region long ago, US President Donald Trump said. According to him, he convinced Moscow not to take active action until telephone talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. I'm not saying that Trump's claims are correct. I just simply don't know. But what is interesting that his statement is strangely coinciding with some sort of operational pause that was kind of established in most western parts of Kursk salient in last 24 to 48 hours. And as you can see, dear friends, there is almost no changes on the map, right? And Garnal settlement and Aleshnya settlement, also this gas station that was playing crucial part in transiting Russian gas through Ukrainian territory into Europe, is formally at least still under control of Kiev regime, which is quite strange. Russian troops establish full control over their 3 dozen of settlements, including Suja, biggest settlement that was occupied by this invading force in the Kursk salient area. And this was done in just a couple of days. And now, for last 48 hours, Russian troops are unable to establish control over the Garnal and the Oleshnya settlement, these tiny, literally tiny villages, by the way. I mean, you have to zoom in big time to see any constructions at all, any buildings at all in Garnal, for example. Just 2 roads and about dozen of some buildings. And same goes for Oleshnya. I mean, let's zoom in. Also tiny settlement. And question is what is happening? I mean, I was a bit confused while monitoring these developments, and I did not have the answer. I mean, what is happening? Why Russian troops did not establish full control over the border, right? In this direction. And I still don't have an answer on that, but maybe during the recent talks between special envoy of Trump, Witkov, when he was in Moscow, maybe Witkov brings some message from Trump to spare the lives of troops of Kiev regime that are now blocked in most western parts of this Kursk salient area, in these 2 tiny villages and surrounding forestry area. And who knows, maybe Russian president agreed that, first there will be some phone conversation between 2 presidents, and after that, some final decisions will be made to, finalize this clearing operation in that direction. Maybe it is true, by the way. I don't know. I mean, sometimes Trump says some stuff that everybody is shocked a little bit, right? And therefore, I don't know if we can take for face value what he is saying here, that thanks to him, this Russian offensive was halted, and this formerly Kiev regime's troops are alive. But in my yesterday's video, dear friends, I did shared information that according to pro-Russian underground or pro-Russian resistance on Kiev-controlled territory, there are dozens of NATO officers trapped in the Kursk salient area. And if there is dozens of officers that were participating in the command and control of this invading operation of the Kiev regime, then I guess there is plenty more so-called mercenaries, right? Regular troops of NATO, or the mercenaries. We can call it whatever we want. And most likely, if this is the case, most likely Trump was asking Russian president to spare the lives of these NATO officers, right? And their NATO mercenaries. In some sense, in some weird sense, Moscow actually could agree on that, because if Russian troops continue this finalizing this clearing operation and they captured these NATO officers, what Russian side would do in that case? I mean, it's an act of war, isn't it? If NATO officers are on Russian soil conducting military operations, it's an act of war. And from whichever countries these officers are coming in, those countries are automatically will end up on the line of fire, right? Russian public might demand some actions if this information will become widely available for the public that there is NATO officers, NATO troops that in Kursk salient area, old Russian borders, let's say, were operating. Moscow will be in a very hawkish situation when they have to react on it, right? And because this is an act of war, clear act of war, right? And maybe, this is just my guess, by the way, maybe during that conversation between Witkov and Putin, between Russia and US sides, decision was made to avoid potential next level of escalation by agreeing on decisions that these NATO officers and their foreign mercenaries will be allowed to flee that area. I know it sounds kind of fantastic, but if you think about it, I mean, if NATO officers were allowed to flee Kursk salient area, then that will allow Moscow to avoid this situation when Moscow has to react on act of war. That presence of NATO officers in Russian territory means, right? Does my reading of the big picture make sense? Hopefully it does. My English is not that good, dear friends, to express what I think are, in best possible way, but I think there could be some agreement in place, by the way, so that Trump can claim that he saved formally troops of AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, in reality these NATO officers and some NATO mercenaries he can brag about, as he already does. And same time, Moscow can avoid this hawkish situation, this strange situation or dangerous situation when information about presence of NATO officers in the Kursk salient area become widely available for the public. And in that case, obviously Moscow will find itself in a position when they have to react on this act of war. But if officially Russia is not acknowledging presence of NATO troops, don't have to acknowledge the presence of NATO troops in the Kursk salient area, if there are no NATO officers taken as prisoners of war, then Moscow basically has to do nothing, and public also can't really demand much, because currently at this point all this information about presence of NATO officers in the Kursk salient area is based on pro-Russian resistance. None of the Russian officials from the defense ministry or the political class officially at least confirm that there are NATO officers in the Kursk salient area and they've been surrounded or taken prisoner or neutralized. So quite strange developments definitely are happening in Kursk direction, and I don't know if there was any agreement in place or not, but Trump is clearly bragging about saving thousands of Kiev regime's troops in the Kursk salient direction. Let's see what kind of results today's talks between Trump and Putin will bring to us. Some major topics probably will be discussed between their sides, and press spokesman of the Russian president was quite optimistic on this topic. Although I will talk about it a little bit late. Now let's go through some other news, but it is definitely quite a strange strangely coincided the statement of Trump and the absence of some significant changes on the map in this last part of the most western areas of the Kursk salient, where, you know, as I already said, Russian troops in previous days established control of the dozens of settlements, and now nothing for the last 24 to 48 hours. It does not make no sense, by the way, from any, however you will look at it, it does not make sense, right? Russian troops established control over this Suja city town, which is a huge, isn't it, compared to these tiny villages that are still formally under control of Kiev regime. And now for 48 hours, Russian troops cannot clear this territory, these two villages, from Kiev regime's forces. I'm not buying it. Something is going on, but I cannot know for sure what that something is. So therefore, on this statement of Trump, I don't know. We should take it with a pinch of salt, but at the same time, maybe he is telling the truth, you know, and there was some agreement in place that, you know, Russian side will spare the lives of these NATO officers, and, you know, no one will mention it. Formally, it will be Kiev regime's troops that Trump has no care about, by the way. I mean, come on now. If you believe that Trump really cares about Kiev regime's troops, then I have a tower bridge to sell you in central London. Anyways, let's continue with some more news. And when it comes to Kursk salient, we have a latest update from the Russian Defense Ministry on total losses of the Kiev regime since the beginning of invasion. And so currently this number stands over 68,000 troops. And as I predicted a few days ago, once clearing operation is finalized, I would not be surprised at all if this number will reach 70,000. And even though in the Western world, many people have some doubts about these numbers, if you ask me, I think this number is very conservative. This number is very conservative, and I tell you why I think so. First of all, Russian Defense Ministry counts only losses on the part of enemy forces when there is objective control on the ground, right? And that's a big deal because, for example, if you see, if objective control shows destruction of, let's say, armored personnel carrier, Russian Defense Ministry might count crew members of the carrier and carrier itself, right? It's a free, usually it's a free crew members and the carrier itself, right? But in reality, this carrier might be full of enemy troops, but you cannot know. Therefore, Defense Ministry will count only free losses on a part of enemy and the carrier itself. While in reality, numbers could be very different. And if you remember, dear friends, I shared information when after first 24 to 48 hours, when this Russian final offensive began in the Kursk salient, about Ukrainian sources that were reporting that Kiev regime already lost in very first 24 hours. It was resident UA, I believe, that was reporting that about 1,000 troops were lost by Kiev regime in just these very first hours of the Russian offensive. And what Russian Defense Ministry reported on that day, it was little more than 200 losses on the part of enemy. There is huge difference, isn't it? Russian Defense Ministry was reporting that Kiev regime's forces lost some 200 plus military personnel, and Ukrainian resources that usually are downgrading, obviously, casualty numbers on their part, were reporting about 1,000 troops. So if Ukrainian side was reporting up to 1,000, that means at least several thousand troops of Kiev regime was neutralized, right? Killed or wounded. But at the same time, Russian Defense Ministry only reported some 200 and something casualties on the enemy side. How? Why this huge difference? And the only logical explanation I have is that objective control, by the way. Russian Defense Ministry reports only when it has objective control, confirmation of their information, right? And that's why I think real numbers easily can reach 100,000, real numbers of the casualties on the part of Kiev regime since the beginning of this invasion. It was a help for Kiev regime's troops, by the way, and now even Western media outlets are reporting or sharing interviews with Kiev regime's troops that managed to escape from Suja, when these soldiers of the Kiev regime themselves are saying that it was a total hell for them, right? So that's why I think this number from Defense Ministry is quite conservative, and the real estimate might be even well over 100,000. And one day we're gonna find out. Also, in the Kursk direction, according to Russian Defense Ministry, Kiev regime's forces lost 396 tanks. I mean, a lot of tanks, by the way. Many countries, many NATO member states don't have so much tanks, right? In the service. UK, for example, don't has 396 tanks in its service. UK only has like 200, right? That's about it. Maybe some 100 more or 200 more tanks can be, taken out from storage facilities and, make workable. But I believe any given day, UK only has about 200 tanks in its disposal. And what about many other NATO member states that have even smaller armies that UK does? Anyways, so 396 tanks were destroyed in the Kursk salient area alone by Russian troops, 319 infantry fighting vehicles, 287 armored personnel carriers, 2,200, by the way, 2,200 armored combat vehicles like Max Pro, Rochelle, and that kind of stuff. Also, more than 2,400 other vehicles that was transformed for military purposes, 560 artillery pieces, 52 multiple launch rocket systems, including dozens of US-made HIMARS. And majority of this equipment, by the way, is Western-made. Hello everyone, if you find this video interesting and useful, please click that like button, leave some commentary and share with your friends. If you like my work and want to support this project, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment, including links to my Patreon and Boosty pages, where you can have access to full shows in case you are interested. Thank you.